Thank you so much. And I'll switch off my camera so that you can record. Okay, so, well, for those of you who do not know what ICCROM is, it's an intergovernmental organization which is dedicated to promote conservation of all forms of heritage, and it was founded in 1956 and headquartered in Rome. It has one regional center in Sharjah and 138 member states are members of ICCROM. And the ICCROM family is expanding. Of course, UK is one of the very important ICCROM member states. And let's say we build knowledge and promote knowledge exchange for conservation of cultural heritage, but we also specialize in capacity development. And we have various programs. And one of the programs, and you can move to the next slide, is the program that I represent, which is First Aid and Resilience for Cultural Heritage in Times of Crisis. It answers to ICCROM's strategic direction on safeguarding heritage and addressing world concerns from conflicts, disasters, and risk drivers such as climate change. Can we move on to the next one, please? Thank you. So as I already highlighted, that this program, you can just click on, because there's a lot of, so we work in every phase protecting heritage. There's ex-ante action, we do training, research, and capacity development to prevent conflicts and disasters, but also work to respond to emergencies, complex emergencies, and also ensure and invest in recovery of heritage post-disaster, post-conflict, as well as increasingly now we are focusing on building resilience, considering the multiple risk drivers that are intersecting and affecting heritage today. You can move on to the next one, please. Sorry, I was going to. Okay, so we situate this work of cultural heritage safeguard in the broader framework of humanitarian aid and development aid, and with the aim to promote broader, integrate this work and promote disaster risk reduction, peace and security, as well as climate action. And this is, I think, a departure where earlier ICCROM used to focus a lot on conservation for the sake of conservation itself, but now we are also, our agenda is tied with promoting sustainable development through heritage conservation. And First Aid and Resilience program is really has developed action in all these areas. Can you please move on to the next one? So how do we do this? How do we translate this into action? We conduct training of different multidisciplinary training at international, regional, and national levels. We also work with informing policy by conducting research and developing knowledge and information tools, as well as providing emergency response and disaster risk reduction advice to our member states. And our capacity development is carried out through research, as I said earlier, applied research, as well as both hybrid training, which is in person and online. And for our international training as well as for our regional training, we have structured follow-ups through which we offer seed grants to participating institutions, and as well as provide mentoring support after training to translate some of the ideas that are discussed in the training into reality, and to promote safeguard, and also to connect, as I said, with disaster risk reduction, climate action, and peace building. Next, please. In 2010, we developed a specialized training that prepares proactive cultural first aiders who can work in hazardous environments and foster interagency cooperation between various emergency actors, as well as in parallel to humanitarian aid, they can secure at-risk heritage and promote early recovery. This is to address complex emergencies, the kind that we are facing right now. We have now developed a network of 1,000 plus cultural first aiders, and also have developed guidance that has been used to make ISO standards, as well as it is being used by the DG ECHO, which is the Directorate General of European um, uh, mm, uh, European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Organization. We have been working closely with UN OCHA, which is Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and there we are working with them to develop guidelines for search and rescue groups to integrate concerns for cultural heritage safeguard and security in that zero phase of emergency, when during the cleanup, a lot of heritage is just cleaned up, and heritage debris is removed accidentally, and those guidelines will be out very soon. And with this, we are also helping. You can move on to the next one, please. We are currently we have through, with the help of our cultural first aiders, we have responded to various emergencies all around the world, and we have offered technical assistance to our member states with the aim to facilitate response, but to actually promote early recovery, especially during major and complex emergencies. Move on to the next one, please. One of our first aiders who has been in touch with us since the start of Ukraine war is Ihor Poshivelo, who has been he has been working with us since 2014 to mount ex ante action. And one of these actions was to quickly translate parts of our emergency evacuation guidelines and help distribute packing supplies. He has founded an organization called HERI. And now you can move on to the next one, please. We have developed an app which is for conducting post-event on-site damage and risk assessment. So this app is helping to verify some of the remote sensing data that has been collected, and we are helping the government to actually estimate what recovery would cost. A report would be out soon based on this app, and we will be then conducting training based on the risk map that will be developed through this app. So now moving on to the topic of our today's conversation, which is climate change, climate resilience, heritage, and communities, and how is that all connected? Well, we have also been conducting research, not only doing training. So we did a field project in Racha, which is a province which borders Russia, in Georgia, and is prone to landslides, earthquakes, and is also obviously facing the risk of conflict. We conducted a field research there with Loughborough University to conduct heritage-centric vulnerability and capacity assessments. And we developed a methodology which helps to assess, collect people's perceptions on disaster risk as well as climate risk. Can you please move on to the next one? The result of this this exercise was the Insight a game, which is a participatory, we call it a game, but it's a participatory vulnerability and capacity assessment, which made us really think deeper about climate change and the problems that communities are facing, and especially for community held places, heritage, where there is very little information available or expertise available to protect this kind of heritage. Can we move on to the next one? So you just go on clicking, and you'll. So this is the this you can download directly from ICCROM's website, and it's available in multiple languages. Can move on to the next one, please. Working with Loughborough University, working on Insight, also made us realize that, and which is, I think, a growing realization everywhere, that with every 1 degree rise in global temperatures, we will have more climate-induced extremes and disasters. And by some estimates, the cost for disaster response will triple. And the question that we have is, are we ready for this? And today we are witnessing, climate impacts in form of crop failures and massive migrations, long drawn out droughts, cyclic flooding, fierce storms and bushfires. And this is not all. The climate crisis has impacted lives and livelihoods in many parts of the world. Especially, it has affected those communities who rely on land, water, and sea for their subsistence. As I also highlighted earlier, what we discovered in Racha, and then later on when we field tested Insight in many other climate hotspots. So this aspect led us to apply for a grant. Can you please move on to the next one? It's like really, and this was like a British Council grant, Cultural Protection Fund's small grant, for which we this was just to like a state-of-the-art conference where we wanted to find out the nexus between climate, culture, and peace. And the findings of this, the key takeaways from this conference highlight that, you can move on to the next one, that we need new mental models for heritage that recognize interdependencies between natural environment and human cultures, as well as we need to recognize the negative heritage of climate change, which is, of course, linked with colonialism, and extend climate and disaster risk reduction of heritage to include at-risk cultural bearers, knowledge systems, practices that are vital for climate change mitigation and adaptation. In this Climate Culture Peace Conference, we had speakers from 113 countries, and participants from 113 countries, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, and speakers from more than 58 countries. And what came out consistently was that everyone emphasized the fact that we have to move away from top-down, expert-centric capacity development to enhance as well as capacity development, and we have to recognize local capacities as well as tap into place-specific knowledge held by communities. So based on these recommendations, ICCROM has now, the First Aid and Resilience Program has now launched a cascading capacity development project called Net Zero for Heritage for Climate Action, which will use indigenous and community health place-specific knowledges as well as practices to reduce disaster risk, promote climate action, and build peace. So it's integrated action. That's the unique point of this project. This project will involve research and field testing of mitigation and adaptation strategies at 5 innovation sites, and it is rooted in the idea that every place has a climate culture story. Now, what do we mean by this climate culture story? We are talking about years of knowledge, community health knowledge, indigenous practices, where people have learned to live with their environment sustainably, consume resources sustainably, and at some point there was a break in that system, and how that place has now evolved, how that has developed, the place has been urbanized. So we go back into the history to build that story and try to unearth, uncover knowledge and practices that can help in consuming resources sustainably, and if possible put us on the path of climate change mitigation, if not at least adapt to a changing climate. So that was the end goal when we conceived this designed this project. This was the idea that we had in mind. Now I'd like to give you some examples. How are we doing this? So we have 5 innovation sites. We call them our innovation sites, which are climate hotspots. So the first one is the Tuti Island, which is situated at the confluence of White and Blue Nile in Sudan. And it is surrounded by metropolis like Khartoum. There is the city of Durman and Khartoum North. And in recent decades, the island has experienced increased temperature, prolonged droughts, irregular rainfall patterns, as well as cyclic floods and sea level rise. So the team here, you can move on to the next one, is researching into indigenous community-held early warning system called TAYA, where based on changing water levels and the color of the water, people upstream provide early warning for floods. Here in this, right now, we are in the first stage where we are building the climate culture story in 7 layers. So we're going back into history, collecting all the information about hazards, about urbanization, about the present governance, the risk governance system. And then we are connecting it with the problems that the community is facing, and how they are living and how they're adapting, as well as we are trying to understand how heritage is being affected. And in this, we are also looking at the TAYA system, and we're trying to understand if the TAYA system, under the climate change, various climate change scenarios, would this TAYA system help the community if we, let's say, improve this system, give them technology-based tools, would this system help to provide early warning under different climate change scenarios, and up to what level this system can function and can be embedded in the existing disaster risk management system of the country, given the situation in Sudan currently, the governance system, as well as considering the conflicts that exist in this area. So we are also looking at how this would, privilege certain communities or not privilege them, or if this could create added tensions. Our next site is in Sudan, in Uganda, where the River Kaberi flows through Kasese district, which is at the edge of a park. And this is a sacred cultural site, and it's Rwenzori Mountain National Park, at the edge of the Rwenzori Mountain National Park. It's a World Heritage Site. And in the last decade, the destructive flooding of River Kaberi, induced by irregular rainfall patterns and rapidly melting glaciers of the Rwenzori Mountains, have disrupted the lives and livelihoods of the lowland communities such as the Bokonzo. And here the project team will tap into Bokonzo's community health knowledge and experience to plant and preserve native plant species to maximize the carbon sequestration and to control riverbank erosion and improve biodiversity in the region. Again, there are multiple problems that are intersecting, and there's also mining that's going on, and there are conflicts, intercommunal conflicts that have to be addressed. So the project will also look into those aspects while researching and doing this work. And once we have all the information together, then we are going to cross-link data and develop mitigation and adaptation strategies. And then the team will receive seed grant. They have already received a part of the seed grant. Then they will receive the second part of the seed grant to implement some and field test some of those mitigation and adaptation strategies. Can we move on to the next one, please? So our next site is in Ubatuba, Brazil, which is next to Sao Paulo. Again, the problems here are that there has been a decline in the fish population due to the rising temperature, and this is threatening the food security in this region. This is also a region that receives a lot of tourism, and they suffer from tropical cyclones, and there's also the issue of sea level rise. This project will use the knowledge held by marginalized local Quilombola communities who were slaves that were brought to Brazil. And this Quilombola community, these communities, they worked on as plantation workers and then escaped here in Ubatuba. And they have developed knowledge over the years. They have accumulated knowledge on doing farming in a sustainable way and preserving crop diversity. However, they have been marginalized in this present system. And our project team here will try to develop an inventory system and seedling banks of native species to mitigate food insecurity. But we have also now, through research, understood that essentially the food insecurity is linked to the water crisis. And many of the water bodies and natural water resource bodies in this area have been contaminated. And most probably, the project team will now divert its efforts and focus on ensuring that mounting an action for cleansing water bodies and then linking it with food security. So moving on. So we can just and this is in Egypt. Our other site is in Egypt, and again this is Rosetta, or a port city on the Nile, edge of the Nile Delta, and a World Heritage Site. It's called Al Rashid in Arabic. And again, the city is affected by rising sea level and increased salinity in the river water. Here, the team will be researching into the old. Can you move on, please? Next slide. Yeah. Vernacular architectural practices on how to adapt to a changing climate, as well as traditional ways of fishing, and again working on mitigation of floods, and how they'll be working on the indigenous knowledge and then using some of these practices to develop mitigation and adaptation strategies in Al Rashid, working with the local government there as well as the local community. Can we move on to the last one? The last one is, this is, no, next one, please, because because now we don't have this site anymore from Iran because of the situation in the Indian state of Rajasthan. And again, at the edge of Thar Desert, it is prone to extreme heat and water scarcity. And here, you can move on to the next one, please. Here again, we will be looking into vernacular architectural practices to see how the city, to feed into the heat action plan that is being developed for the city, and also look at traditional water management systems to understand if more water the city can, mitigate the risk of water scarcity by adopting some of the older methods for water conservation and rainwater conservation, as well as using some of those traditional methods. So that's all. The various phases are that we are right now in the situation analysis and data gathering phase, where all teams which are multidisciplinary, drawn from different agencies, are working to understand the root causes for climate risks, as well as disaster and conflicts in their respective contexts. And then we will bring all this data together in an in-person workshop where we'll be developing mitigation and adaptation solutions together with economists, climate change scientists, as well as disaster risk management specialists and peace builders. Then in the phase 3, we will be going back into these sites and field testing some of the mitigation and adaptation solutions. And in the phase 4, I invite all of you to join us in an international symposium where we will also be able to showcase our risk assessment methodology, climate culture stories methodology, as well as disseminate the results of how we have used heritage-based knowledge, heritage practices in mitigating and adapting to changing climate in 5 different hotspots all around the world, in the world. So that's it. Thank you so much for your attention and questions.
Thanks, Aparna. That was great. I'll just maximize my screen again. Bear with me a second. Many windows open here. Just trying to load. Okay, there we go. I will stop sharing my screen. Okay, everyone, thanks for that, Aparna. That was really fascinating. Lots of absolutely, brilliant projects going on there, and lots of, on the ground work and implementation, which is fantastic to see. I had a question about the final phase 4, just on the timing of that, because, we'd be keen to get involved there and try and engage with that as much as we can. Do you know when that's likely to take place? Oh, you're on mute now, Aparna. It could be because we switched.
We're looking to, I think, November
Okay.
23. And that's the time when we had planned for it. Hopefully, everything should go as per plan.
Yeah.
And field research, the field testing is the most critical part. And hope that we won't be delayed in that. And our second phase will kick off in April, on April 9th. We'll be meeting in Rome and then in Cinque Terre. And then from there, we will take it from there. Yes. But we'll definitely keep in touch with you and let you know.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Any questions from anybody else? Just feel free to. Rob? Yeah, feel free to go ahead. Rob, could you turn your. Yes, great. Camera back on for the questions. Thank you. Yes, we can.
Thank you, Aparna. Really fantastic presentation there. Very inspiring stuff. Just wonder a question. At the end, you were talking about methodology and toolkits to look at risk and vulnerability and helping to create something which would be used beyond these moments.
Yes.
I know that lots of people are looking at risk and vulnerability. So my question is firstly, well, actually, mindful of also your comment saying about not having a top-down expert approach.
Yes.
Should we all be working to one approach, or do we recognize benefits in having lots of different approaches, which in the end of the day may come to the similar outcomes? I'm trying to work out whether or not it's one model or we're comfortable with lots of different models.
I think personally, I think because all our teams are very different, the composition is very different. So it's like to advocate for one model would be what we'll be bringing is like we'll be saying like we have like for vulnerability and capacity assessment we have researched, as you said rightly, there are methods. So what we are doing is we are using them to see if the Red Cross method would work for heritage, or if our own insight method, which we developed with Loughborough University, would work in case A, case B. So what we have done is we have worked with our teams to develop options and to test them. In, for example, Sudan is a very different setup. So they will have to obviously find something which is more suitable to their context and can work in their system without getting into the problems with their different agencies, because we are also trying to get local governments involved. And as you know, governments have their own ways of doing things. So to be able to do that, we have to also adapt to what they may be having in place already, and then try to see if we can feed heritage into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aparna. Kelsey, I think you have your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Hi, thank you for that. It was really a very interesting presentation, and really interesting to hear about the different projects. I'm really attracted to the idea of tapping into this local traditional knowledge and using it to kind of as an additive to what we're kind of more modern kind of technology can bring to these challenges. Can I just one of the things I wasn't entirely clear, and maybe there's no fixed answer to this, but are you intending to, with these different mitigation techniques, are you going to be kind of trialing? The real world is a really poor laboratory, I understand that, but like, are you going to be trialing kind of traditional technologies plus modern technologies, and kind of modern technologies without the traditional side by side, in a way that I think what I would love to see is some kind of way of demonstrating to the world collectively that it's not just worthwhile doing these things, but actually they really can make a strong additive difference. And so I wondered if you could talk a bit about that.
Okay, well, we have been discussing that, and again, it's a very team specific. Because if we dictate that would be very top down again, and also we also have to take it to the local communities that we are discussing it with, right? So one of the concerns is that we try to understand it through the various climate change scenarios and the pathways that socioeconomic pathways that the governments are adopting in these areas. So what would be the limit of an adaptation strategy, or what would be the limit of a mitigation strategy under which, for example, if we are talking about water scarcity in Jodhpur city, and we are thinking they are developing already a heat action plan for the city, and they say that color blue, painting the houses with color blue, which is a traditional technique, is going to reflect off heat, then we are going to we are trying to understand how much, under what conditions does this work, and what other things we can add to it to make it work, you know. So it's more about the limit of the adaptive measure, or the limit of a strategy under which scenario. And if the government keeps on developing the way it is developing now, then the scenarios are very grim, and perhaps these places will become unlivable. So we are trying not to have a rose-colored view of heritage, and we are also trying to understand, if we privilege one community and if we associate knowledge with one particular community, would that create more imbalances which are already being, climate change is in itself is a risk driver. It's already driving inequality. Then if we go there as this elite group and work with the local people and say, like, your knowledge is the way out of this disaster, then perhaps we are unfairly privileging one community with one type of knowledge. And so we have to be open to be able to, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. No, I think that's, I appreciate the myriad political complexities you're operating under. So I really look forward to seeing the results. It sounds really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful to the Swedish Postcode Foundation for giving us this opportunity to really experiment, because as an intergovernmental organization, we have our limitations for funding, and we do need this kind of honest research to understand the positive as well as the negative aspects of our traditional practices and heritage-based knowledge.
Great, thanks. Joe, I think you had a question.
Yeah, it's a little bit off the back of that. Is so if we're drawing on that sort of traditional knowledge and vernacular design of certain regions, obviously those regions are then changing in their climate as climate change is progressing. What have you started to look into kind of knowledge sharing between different temperate areas, so that perhaps a vernacular design from a kind of more mild temperate region might then need to be updated to something from a kind of more arid zone as the climate changes?
I hope that would be the spin-off of this project. What we are hoping is that this will allow us to, and that's why a group like yours would be so much more, because it's a lovely question. Perfect. This is the kind of spin-off we are hoping for.
I love vernacular design. This is so fascinating.
Yes. So yeah, this is the kind of thing we are hoping for. Yes. So we are already, like, for example, the team in Jodhpur is already in touch with the team in Ahmedabad. They have done some of their studies in Ahmedabad. So you see, there is between teams they are doing things, but we are hoping that more such spin-offs will emerge.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any final questions for Aparna? Ed? Oh, you're just on mute still, Ed.
Somebody had to do it. Thank you. That was a really fascinating presentation, Aparna. I just wanted to ask if the field trials and the work that you're doing is engaging with local politics to try and embed policies into to improve policy locally, as well as changing sort of the specific local situation. Given your sort of intergovernmental range, it occurred to me you might have quite a sort of strong position to sort of negotiate with national governments, but maybe that's not the case.
There's one thing we have to be very careful. We are actually walking a tightrope here. We are not turning people into climate activists, for sure. We are definitely working with disenfranchised and marginalized communities. That we have realized, really, everywhere where. That's why this climate culture story part is so important. Everywhere we have been so far, or the 45 proposals we've received, communities that have this kind of knowledge are really marginalized. Now, how do we improve their lives, as well as, not preach at local governments, and include these practices, is something that still remains to be seen. That's the problem. Yeah. And that's where we'll need the development specialists or economists and other people to build a case. And that's where our limitation is, and frankly speaking, This is where I'm scared.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I just want to highlight one aspect, though. One thing that was very interesting because so we have Sherpas, or small researchers assigned to each team. So this is a group of young people drawn from the field of disaster risk management and all, and they are assisting each team they're steering them, basically. Sherpas are pathfinders and helping them document and write and develop these case studies, which we hope will be available in form of open source publication at the end of the project. And Unfortunately, we didn't have money, enough funding, so I am de facto Sherpa, too old to be a Sherpa, but I am a Sherpa for one of the teams in Egypt, and we realized that there are so many maps, so much of information, which is in UK libraries, or because of the history, the past. There's a lot of information which is overseas, and one positive step we can take is we can really try to prioritize this type of heritage, maps, or seed banks or herbarium collections, or to understand what was this place in history like, and to share that knowledge through digitization, or through, because this is going to become a big barrier in our reaching out to, like, we got some maps from Baudelaire Library, but we need high resolution in order to build GIS based
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting projects coming out of the Zooniverse world. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're citizen science projects where they're using volunteers to help extract useful information from digitized sources. Particularly, there's quite a lot of focus on climate change around things like digitized ships logs, for example, to give you sort of the insight into sort of historical climate records and so on, which we don't otherwise have access to. Yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any final questions? Okay. In that case, thanks, Aparna. Absolutely fascinating. And we're